Hey there, I'm Tara and this is my husband Lee. We live and run Wild Bird Farm here in central Iowa. For the past 3 months, we have been working on this DIY hoop house. So from early September through the end of November, we've been slowly getting things done. I've been taking video and photos along the way, and I'm going to fill you in on all the details today. The overall size is 40 by 20 feet, and we decided on that because the metal hoops or ribs were secondhand, and that is what the number of those that we could buy afforded us with correct spacing for heavy snow load. We used pre-treated 4x4s to edge the perimeter. And as you'll notice on the smaller hoop house I've been using for the last 5 years, we did a similar setup. You'll notice in our original hoop house we have wood end walls that shrunk as the seasons went on. In order to make our new one a little bit more weather resistant, we swapped out the end walls, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. Back to those second-hand ribs, we have 11 hoops total, and those were sunk into the ground by putting in a 2-foot piece called an in post, pounded into the ground, and then those arched hoops slid into that post that was anchored into the ground. Again, we have 11 hoops, and it's about 9.5 feet height in the center of those hoops. We had to purchase all of the other metal bracing, so that top rail is a piece of chain link fence part, and it's 1 3/8 in diameter. We needed 3 of those pieces to span the entire length of the hoop house. We also put 4 on each end, angled at a brace, of course secured into the ground, as well as to the corner of the hoop house. Once we had that top rail secured, we used cross-grid pipe connectors with bolts to attach many smaller metal pieces the length of the hoop house and then also down from the top, really to secure and anchor that whole structure together. This took a decent amount of time and some finagling to get things close to being square. Here's a shot of those corner braces. As you can see, we used wood on the short end walls. We dug about 3 feet down to sink those 4x4s well into the ground, and then came through and made a grid pattern with more horizontal wood. This is going to support those end walls and help keep the structure rigid. We then cut off the excess wood at the ends, and we were almost ready for the polycarbonate pieces that would be screwed into the 2x4s on each of the short sides. And here we are partway through putting up the polycarbonate. You can see there's a space up top where we'll put a little vent. And then we also have the doors in, which are just screen doors that we can open as needed to let some airflow through. Getting close and looking like a true hoop house now. Time for the plastic. Now this is where we changed things up a bit from the original hoop house that we had put up. We didn't use wiggle wire the first time around, but you can see here that we did secure the wiggle wire channel to 2x4s, and then that is going to be how we secure the plastic all around the house. And then you'll also see that we're using two different pieces, one that will be able to be rolled up with hand cranks, which is what we used on our original hoop house, but we are using a separate piece of plastic for that strip. So the plastic around the upper rim and the curve of the hoop house is going to be stationary, which is a different setup than what we'd used on the original house. The plastic sheet we used for the upper curve was about 50 by 28 feet, leaving lots of extra. We started on one end with the wiggle wire and then pulled it taut to the other side. And then we had to sort of even out the long sides after that, if that all makes sense. Here's a close-up shot of the horizontal wiggle wire. You'll see two separate pieces here. One is to secure the top half, and then that lower piece, about 3 feet, is going to be what is able to be rolled up with the hand crank. So our last step here is we have some rope that we're going to throw back and forth and secure on each side. This is just going to help hold that plastic down as we get a lot of wind here. We needed a weight with all soft sides, and we had this oversized ducky in our garage, and so that worked out perfectly to throw the rope back and forth. One thing we learned sort of the hard way on our other hoop house is this plastic slices very easily. I was out cleaning off a snow load last year, thinking I had a tool that was appropriate for that job, and it sliced about a 2-foot hole right in the center of the plastic, and that's tough to repair when it's negative degrees and snowing out. So learning our lesson, our little yellow ducky worked pretty well for this. A couple passes back and forth to tighten up that rope, and we are ready for winter. We didn't put the hand cranks on yet. We actually sealed that down to the ground with the wiggle wire for the cold months. But once it becomes milder and we need to roll those sides up, we will take out that section of wiggle wire in the lower 3 feet and add our hand cranks, and that way we can get a lot of ventilation into the hoop house. One thing I didn't get a great picture of were the clips that we're using to secure the rope. And then let's look at the little beat up old tunnel over here. We'll put hand cranks on here like this has in the spring. So again, from here down, that is the piece of plastic that can roll up to get airflow in and to cool off the building. And then these sides are stationary this time around. It is a chilly one. We have had some awfully cold weather. We are in the week before Christmas, and it's just taken me a little bit longer than I planned to get this all put together. So far, so good. Definitely holding tight in here. Now you'll see a bunch of blue hoops, and this is because we put low tunnels in here for the plants that I established in late summer, early fall. So we have a whole row here of snapdragons, various varieties. You can kind of see where the varieties change. The center, I've noticed these center snapdragons don't seem to be quite as cold hardy as the ones down here. I'll have to check the varieties. I thought I had picked all that were an earlier season, but I'll double check on that. Pansies are still flowering, if you can believe that. December 20th, I'll still pick off a couple of these flowers, bring them in and put them in a bud vase. They're pretty sweet. The foxglove, of course, is looking great. This struggled a little bit after planting, so I'm really glad to see it bounce back. And then, of course, I've had Sweet William in my other hoop for years, and I know it's tough as nails and will do great in here. Now, I did plant out a few ranunculus, and this is mostly what I came out here to see. Now there are some weeds. Let's see, let's find some. So like that right there, baby ranunculus popping up. They love the cold temps. It's great if they can put on their root growth now because they're probably gonna flower sooner for me, and we get very warm very quickly in the spring. So that's a good thing. I see a lot popping up. I'm really happy with this. Now I got in, it's more than double what you see here. So late that I didn't end up planting them. So I'm gonna have to come out here in late winter after I pre-sprout them and plant the rest of this middle row. But it's looking pretty promising. Now the blue hoops, let me show you here. We haven't actually put them together yet. But we're gonna take something like this that we were using to mark out the rows. We need a little bit thinner, but the blue will slide right over that. It'll make a low hoop over the rows, and then I will cover the entire thing in frost cloth. We generally have some sort of Arctic blast where it gets down to something crazy like -20 Fahrenheit here. And at that point, I will come out and maybe put 2 row covers on each row. Not necessarily maybe this foxglove and Sweet William row, but definitely the ranunculus and the pansies I think would benefit from that. And it kind of looks like those snapdragons in the middle aren't going to be quite as hardy as well. So that's kind of the plan for winter. I know we have colder weather to come, but I think we're set up pretty good here to get ourselves through until spring. Thank you for sticking with me on this. I expected to have the hoop house put up in October and I could put this video out a little bit sooner than I got to it. So I appreciate you being patient with me. But hopefully this was kind of a good overview of what we did to get the house stood up, and then going into spring I can show you how things progress in here. Since we are so close to the holidays, happy holidays to everyone, Merry Christmas, and I hope to see all of you in the new year.